Hey everyone, it's time to bake some cupcakes, and we're gonna make these Cosmic Brownie Cupcakes. I think you're really gonna love these. They're a fun take on the classic Cosmic Brownies. These cupcakes are lighter than brownies, they're fudgier than your average chocolate cupcake. They're topped with rich fudgy frosting and all finished off with colorful cosmic sprinkles. And I hope you love these just as much as I do. So this recipe will make about 24 cupcakes, give or take. So you're gonna need 2 of these 12 count cupcake pans. And then I'm just using the standard cupcake liners. And then I'll tell you what I like to do, and you can do whatever makes you comfortable. But I do like to spray the cupcake liners with just a non-stick baking spray, just really lightly. I think it helps the cupcakes not stick. Some people like to do that, some people don't. It's totally up to you. I just do it sort of as a precautionary method or measure, and it seems to help, but do whatever you find that works best for you. So the other trick is, if you are going to spray the cupcake liners, you don't want to put them in your pan first and then spray, because the cupcakes or the actual baking spray is going to get all over your pan, and then when it bakes in, it bakes kind of hard on there, and then after a few bakes like that, it gets really kind of sticky and gummy, and it's hard to clean your pans. That's what I found. It sort of bakes on there. So if you're going to do that, then actually take your cupcake liners and spray them away from the pan. Spray them first, just a quick spritz like that, or not even that much really, and then you want to add it to your pan. It's going to take a little bit more time doing it that way, but for me it really helps keep my pans looking really kind of new and fresh. You can also just set out all of your cupcake liners here on the counter and then just spray them all together. All right, before we start making the batter, we want to preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So first we're going to add 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And then, like I always say, sprinkle it into your measuring cup so it doesn't accidentally get packed into the cup. And then you would actually end up adding in too much flour, and then your cake could be too dense. And next we're going to add in a full cup of natural unsweetened cocoa powder. And this is different than Dutch cocoa powder. This is acidic, Dutch cocoa powder is not. And since we're going to be using baking soda in this recipe, you really need this to be the acidic cocoa powder. It also has a different sort of taste to it. They both taste really great. And this one just seems more of a chocolate flavor to me, like your typical chocolate flavor. The Dutch processed type cocoa powder tastes more like an Oreo type of chocolate, which is also good. It's just a different kind of flavor. And I will put a link to, I have a few cakes using Dutch processed. It's also called black cocoa powder, and it's very good in cakes as well. And I'll put links to those recipes in the description for you if you want to check those out. But for this recipe, we're just going to use the natural unsweetened. And we're measuring this the same way that we measure the flour, just spooning it into the measuring cup. And I always make a mess when I measure cocoa powder. It's just so light and fluffy that it gets everywhere. And for some reason, I accidentally hit the spoon on something every single time. So let's see how I do here. Okay, let's see. Let's see how this is going to work. Ooh. Well, that wasn't so bad. Next, add 1½ teaspoons of baking powder and 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Don't skip the salt. I know it sounds weird to add salt to cakes, but don't skip it because it's a flavor enhancer. It does all kinds of good stuff for cakes. Okay, 1 cup of granulated sugar, and you don't have to spoon that into your measuring cup. You can just dig your measuring cup right on in there. And we're going to add 1 cup of light brown sugar. And you want to pack that into the measuring cup. So I just use the side of the bag to do that. I sort of pour it onto the measuring cup inside of the bag and then push it in there. And you want to make sure it's sort of level with the top of the measuring cup. Like that. Okay, so I'm going to just use a whisk and mix everything up really well. Sometimes the brown sugar can get a little lumpy, so you can just use the whisk to break up any of those lumps. All right, and then when you get all this mixed up, you'll just set this to the side. Okay, in a smaller mixing bowl, we're going to add our liquid ingredients. So the first one is 3/4 cups of regular vegetable oil. And then 1 cup of milk. And I've poured it into these bowls because I like to go ahead and set out the cold ingredients so that they can come closer to room temperature. I don't always do that in time, but I think it's probably better to do that if you can, because all of the ingredients mix better like that. But it's not vital if you don't have time to do that. It'll still work out. Okay, and I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Let's see if I can just get 1 teaspoon. Usually I get more. Look at that. And then I'm going to add in 2 large eggs, and I always crack the eggs into another bowl, because if you add it like this, inevitably you're going to get an eggshell in there. I do it every time, so I just know to crack the eggs in something else and then make sure there's no eggshells in there, and then pour the eggs in. And on another note, make sure you're using the correct size eggs. So I use large eggs in most all of my recipes. A lot of times I'll get responses back to a recipe where someone tried it and the cake overflowed or something like that. And it turned out they were using extra large eggs, or maybe like yard eggs that were larger than your normal average eggs, or maybe they use smaller eggs. So make sure that you're using the correct size eggs, because it really does make a difference. Okay, so I'm going to take a whisk and whisk this up until it's mixed as well as I can get it. And we are going to add in a little bit more liquid, but we're not going to do that until the end of the mixing process. Okay, so I have my bowl on my mixer, and it's the dry ingredients. We're going to pour the liquid ingredients into the dry ingredients in just 1 pour. And I'm using an electric, a stand mixer here. You can just use a regular hand electric mixer. That is totally fine. I just like to use my KitchenAid because it's easy to use and it's handy. All right, so we're going to pour this in there. And you're going to mix on medium speed here, because you don't want to mix too fast or too long, since this is a scratch cake. So you really want to be careful about that, because you can overdevelop the gluten in the flour and you're going to get a dense cake. It's just not good. So we're just going to do this on medium just until it's well combined, and I will show you exactly how long I'll mix it for. Okay, that's it. So I just mixed it on low and then went up to medium. And now I'm going to scrape down the sides and the bottom of the bowl. Okay, so I'm just going to mix this for a few more seconds. Okay. All right, now we're going to add in a 1/2 cup of very hot coffee. You don't have to add the coffee, but you do need the liquid. So you can make it with very hot water is fine too. I just use the coffee because it really brings out the chocolate flavor, but it's not going to make your cupcakes taste like coffee. It doesn't really give it a coffee flavor. You'd have to add like a lot of coffee, which would totally ruin the texture, or you'd have to add like instant coffee crystals or something like that to get it to taste like coffee. So this is not going to do that, but it is going to add some moisture and bring out the flavor of the chocolate. If you do not like coffee or don't have it, don't worry about it. Just use very hot water, but don't omit the liquid here. So pour that in. And then half the time this makes a massive mess. So a lot of the times I like to wrap it with plastic wrap. So that's what I'm going to do now. If you're just using a hand mixer, you might just have to just go with it and see what happens, but that's okay too. So I'm just going to mix this on medium just until it's well combined. Whoop, I went the wrong way when I tried to turn that off. Okay, that looks good. I'm gonna raise it up and then just scrape around the sides and the bottom, and then I'm gonna mix again only for a few seconds. Okay, just for a few seconds. I guess that was like 8 or 10 seconds. Okay. And I don't know about you, but I feel like when I make chocolate cake or chocolate cake batter, like the batter just gets, it's just messier than a vanilla cake batter. I'm sure that's not true. I mean, how could that be true? But I guess maybe because it's the darker color, it just feels like it just gets everywhere. Okay, now we're going to add the batter to our cupcake liners, and I just like to use like a 1/4 cup little measuring cup thing here. But some people use like cookie scoops. That's fine too. Just whatever you like to use best. And then I scrape off the bottom so it doesn't drip everywhere, even though it still does half the time. But that is just how cupcakes are done, right? They're messy. And we're going to fill these up about 2/3 of the way full. You'll see that they're firm to touch, and then you can also try the toothpick test where you put a toothpick in there and then it comes out clean or just with a few moist crumbs on it. But mine ended up taking about 21 minutes, actually maybe 22 minutes. And then you'll set them on the cooling racks and let them just sit here in the pans for about 10 minutes or so. And then you're going to take them out of the pan onto the rack to cool completely. And then next we're going to work on the frosting for the top, and I'll show you how to do all that. And one quick tip as well, you really don't want to overbake these, so watch them closely, because when you overbake cupcakes, they end up a little bit dry. So be really careful not to overbake, but you can tell that it's just firm on the top, bounces back slightly, and then you can do the toothpick test. You don't have to do the toothpick test in each cupcake, just pick one sort of in the middle, and that will give you a good idea. So when you take these out of the pans here like this, if they have baked over the sides just a little bit, they might be a little bit stuck to the pan. So just take a spoon here and then just push it away from the edge. If you try to pick it up, it might rip off the edge. So just use a spoon and kind of tap it and push it in a little bit, and then use the spoon to help you get it right out of the cupcake space, or whatever that is called. So you just push it around, pop the spoon underneath, and pop it out. And you could probably grease around the top of the pan. I just, again, don't really like to do that because it seems to bake onto the top of the pan. But whatever works best for you. Okay, so it's the next day and I'm gonna make the frosting now, and you don't have to wait till the next day to do this. Clearly you just need to wait until the cupcakes cool down completely to be able to frost them. But sometimes I have other things going on and I can't do everything in one day, which, you know, is how life happens. So it's the next day either way, and we're gonna make the frosting. And the first thing that you wanna do is grab a 12-ounce bag of semi-sweet chocolate chips. You can use this brand or you can use any brand that you like. And then I'm just gonna add these to a microwavable safe bowl. And we're gonna microwave these and melt it. Okay, so I just microwaved it about 30 seconds a few different times and stirred it in between those times. And then the last time I just microwaved it for about 20 seconds or so, but you wanna do it in short increments like that so that the chocolate doesn't burn. So once it gets all smooth and melted like this, you do want to set this to the side to cool down a bit, because we're going to add this into our buttercream mixture, and you don't want to add it hot. So just set this to the side. You can also set it in the fridge if you want it to cool down quicker, but you kind of have to keep an eye on it if you do it that way, and then stir it quite often while it's being chilled. While the chocolate is cooling down, we're going to add the other ingredients of our buttercream, and this is 2 cups of unsalted butter. So it's 4 sticks because 2 sticks is 1 cup. So we're just going to add all of this to a large mixing bowl. And then we're gonna just mix this on medium to medium high. It doesn't really matter at this point. You just want to make sure that the butter, that you mix it up until it's creamy and smooth. And before I forget, it is room temperature butter, so make sure that you've set the butter out a couple of hours before you're going to actually make it. It works better if you set it out and just allow it to come to room temperature on its own rather than microwaving, because microwaving can tend to heat it unevenly. You'll have melted parts and cold parts, so it's really best if you can let it come to room temperature on its own. So room temperature butter here. All right, let's continue to mix. That is looking pretty good. So now we're going to add in 1 cup of cocoa powder, and it doesn't have to be exact, but you want about 1 cup. And we're going to mix that up, and I have a feeling that cocoa powder is going to go everywhere. I'm going to scrape the sides and the bottom of the bowl here. And I have a question. When you were a kid, did you ever accidentally eat unsweetened cocoa powder by itself, thinking that it was like chocolate milk mixed? Because I sure did. And I will tell you, you only do that once. You learn your lesson. It's definitely not the same thing. And now we're going to add in 2 cups of confectioner sugar. You can sift if you want to. Half the time I sift, half the time I don't. It's not really vital unless you need a super smooth buttercream or you have lumps in your confectioner sugar. All right, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla and 2 tablespoons of regular milk. So I've just mixed this up on medium-high speed, and I'm going to go around and scrape the sides and the bottom of the bowl again. And now we want to add in this melted chocolate from before, and I actually ended up putting mine in the fridge for about 12 minutes, and I stirred it about every 5 minutes, and it's just about room temperature. So we're going to add that in. So we're going to have basically double chocolate buttercream. It's going to be so good. All right, we're going to mix this up on medium-high. And as usual, I am scraping the sides of the bowl, and then I will scrape the bottom, and we'll mix again just to make sure that everything is incorporated really well. Oh my gosh, this looks amazing. Oh, it looks so good. If it's too thick when you make it, you can add another tablespoon of milk and mix it up. I kind of want it a little bit thick like this though, because I'm going to pipe it on top of the cupcakes. But you can make it whatever consistency that you want. I'm going to pipe the frosting onto the cupcakes. You don't have to do that. You can just spoon it on or just use a knife and spread it on if you want to. But since I'm going to do that, I thought I would show you how I do that. So this is an Atico piping bag, and I just get them in these big boxes. They're on Amazon. I can put a link in the description below. But these are the 18-inch bags. They're very large bags. You can get smaller bags if you want, but I like the 18 inches because I can put a lot more frosting in them. So I'm just going to pull one bag off of the roll. And I like these two tips for cupcakes. This one is a 2D, makes good rosettes and cupcake swirls. And then this one is a 1M. So I'm just going to go with the 1M this time. And I'll put links to these in the description as well. So first I just cut off. I just kind of have to guesstimate. I usually get it wrong, but who knows. And then I fold down the top of the bag a little bit. Open it up and then pop the piping tip into it. Push it down to the bottom. And you keep going until this is tight around the piping tip, but you want to make sure that all of the little holes are here where it's separated, that they're not within this bag still. So I just pushed just a little bit to make sure it's got a good seal. And actually I did pretty good with cutting this one. Seems to have worked out. And before I put the frosting on the cupcakes, I had mentioned earlier that this was the next day that I had baked the cupcakes the day before. So I just wanted to show this to you real quick. Cupcakes dry out really quickly. And especially if you keep them in the fridge. They don't really need to be in the fridge. Cake in general doesn't, but I'll go on a diatribe about that later. But unless it has something perishable in it, like some kind of whipped topping or fruit or something, basically what you want to do is just keep it at room temperature. And to keep them from drying out on you, I just put them in like this little container here, this Rubbermaid container. Now, I know it's plastics. Please don't get to me for that. If you have a glass container with a lid on it that can give you a good seal, that's perfectly fine too. But you want to keep them in a container like this and just make sure that they are sealed up and that no air is getting to them. And then they're gonna they'll still be moist when the time comes for you to put the frosting on and for whenever you want to eat them. Basically, you want to eat them probably within a few days because as the days progress, they're going to dry out on you. But just a day or two, that's perfectly fine. And I have a question while I am setting the cupcakes on this platter. So I'm trying this new kind of form of narration where I'm just actually talking to you as I'm doing it instead of narrating the videos afterwards. I kind of like this. I'm not probably as eloquent as I would like to be doing it this way, but it's fun though because I can just kind of talk to you while I'm doing it. So if you like this type of narration, let me know. If you don't, let me know that too. But I'm just interested to hear what you think about it. And then I'm just adding in some frosting into the piping bag. This is the super messy part. There are less messy ways to do it. You can always put your frosting on some plastic wrap, roll that up, and then put that inside of your piping bag. But sometimes I just don't really feel like doing that, so I do it this way. All right, and you get it in there. You want to smash all of it down, twist your bag, and then you're going to squeeze. Some people say this is like you need to burp the bag, and I really hate that term. It grosses me out, but you need to squeeze it a little bit to see if there's a pocket of air stuck in there. That way it doesn't explode icing all over your cupcake. So I'm just going to hold this straight up, and I'm going to start in the middle instead of the outside so that you don't see the starting point. So start in the middle, then go to the outside, and then we're just going to swirl right inside of the perimeter, go in a circle, and then come up like that. Squeeze in the middle, go around, come up. And then you want to keep twisting your bag and pushing the icing down in the piping bag. Now when the icing starts getting lower, or the frosting starts getting lower in the bag, you might start getting some air bubbles. So you just kind of have to play it by ear. And I have shaky hands, so I can't do super intricate designs, but even people with shaky hands like me, we can still do this. There we go. And to make these cupcakes look like Cosmic Brownie Cupcakes, I got these candy coated chocolate chips. They're kind of smaller chocolate chips, but they're coated in this candy-like thing that kind of resembles the toppings that Cosmic Brownies have on them. And I found these in Amazon. I have not been able to find these at my local grocery store, but they might have something like this in like a baker supply store, but I don't have anything like that near me. But I will put a link to this in the description below if you would also like to use these to get that sort of Cosmic Brownie look. So all I'm doing here is just sprinkling some on the top of each cupcake. And you kind of want to do this soon after you've piped the frosting on so that the frosting hasn't had time to fully set up yet. So if you make these cupcakes, I'd love to know what you thought about them. I'm going to leave the recipe link in the description below, and there's also a metric button there. Once you get to that post, you can click on the metric button in the recipe card. It will change the measurements for you to metric if you need that. Okay, y'all, happy cupcake baking, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.